Hello, 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 everybody. Hello, 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 hello. Do, 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 do. 5, 4, 3. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about the Epstein case. Why won't this case go away? It just gets more and more complex the more that we find out about it. We've got to talk about it, though, because it has domestic and international political implications, but it also has impacted the culture. A lot of issues intersect here. Uh, the abuse of young girls, young ladies who are not powerful, who are poor, who are working class. You've got the intersection of very wealthy people who take advantage of people who are perceived to be powerless to fight back. But you also have espionage. You have connections to the intelligence community. And what was this all about anyway? And when you look at how this case is being adjudicated, we're going to look at that a little bit more closely today, you see so many ties. All of these people are in this hornet's nest. Bronco Marketish is just amazing. So let's talk about this today on the Santita Jackson Show. But as we do that, I want you to meet me on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Please, everybody, pass this along. And go to the Santita Jackson Facebook page. I can only join you. You can only join me on Santita Jackson and Friends. So please go there. Santita Jackson and Friends. And then, of course, I'm on X at Santita J, at Santita J, and on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. Santitajackson.bsky social. So we've got attorney Mark Fancher. It's always a joy to have this brilliant author and civil libertarian with us. Bryce Green, our beloved student, freedom fighter, who is also, I got him from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. So brilliant is he. And we've got yet another brilliant writer. I would say investigative journalist, Yesterday's Man. When you read this book about Joe Biden, it helps to remind you about his record. Yesterday's Man, the case against Joe Biden. But today I want to go to this Jacobin piece, and he's been a writer with Jacobin magazine, one of my favorites for a long time. A judge's conflict of interest over the Jeffrey Epstein documents. It seems that we just keep going down the rabbit hole, Bronco. It seems that no one in a certain space is untouched by Jeff Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Who is this judge? Because as I read this article, it was like, my goodness, well, where are they going to try the case? On Mars? I don't know. Oh, but you got to unmute yourself. Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was muted. On the one hand, the story is connected to a wider problem, which is that federal judges, have all sorts of investments, have all sorts of financial entanglements. We saw this most clearly with the Clarence Thomas case, where some judges apparently don't see a six-figure salary as being enough to get by on, and so they do all this outside kind of money raising. So that's part of it. But this judge in particular, Loretta Preska, basically she sealed a bunch of documents that could shed light on who exactly was involved in Epstein's crimes, who was kind of either taking part in them or potentially facilitating them. We don't know without seeing the documents, but they're sealed up as part of this defamation case that was tried. And it just so happens that because of her husband's work, he is a partner at Cale Gordon, which is this massive law firm that represents mostly large financial firms. She happens to be indirectly connected to a number of financial firms that we know Jeffrey Epstein had relationships with, that we know were highly embarrassed when those relationships came to light, that were actually the subject of court cases, lawsuits because of that relationship. And so, the question becomes, the fact that she sealed these documents, or the fact that she may be involved in the decision now to review some of those sealings and decide what will go public and what won't. Is she the right person to do this, given that she does have what I would argue is a bit of a conflict of interest here?
What is the conflict of interest? Because we see that her husband has a decades-long interest in these banks with whom Jeffrey Epstein was connected either by employment or investment. I'm wondering, when you look at these federal judges, particularly in that space in New York and in Washington, is there anyone who has not been touched by him?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, certainly at this law firm, Cahill Gordon, Loretta Preska's husband has been with that firm for 50 years. I think has been a partner for maybe 40 of those. That firm has represented just about every Wall Street firm that you can think of, including Deutsche Bank, which people may not remember, but it was the subject of a major lawsuit by a group of Jeffrey Epstein's victims who sued the bank over the fact that it had this business relationship with Epstein for years after he had already been convicted and after he was forced to register as a sex offender. So, by this point, everyone knew what this guy was doing. It was pretty common knowledge, but the money was too good and they kept it up. They got sued over it.
Wait. You got to stop right there. It was common knowledge that he was doing what he was doing. That is, trafficking these girls. And no one said anything. These are officers of the law, Branko.
Yeah, well, and with this bank, with Deutsche Bank, the lawsuits that were filed against it over this fact is basically it was alleged that the top executives at the firm overruled what would normally kind of be flagged as part of due diligence. You say, well, turns out this guy 5 years ago was convicted of, I think prostitution was the official charge, but, all this stuff came out about him trafficking young girls potentially and molesting them. So, normally a bank would say, maybe we shouldn't take this guy on as a client. But in this case, what's alleged in these lawsuits is that basically executives overruled that because Epstein was a very rich guy and they decided that the money was worth it. And he wasn't the only unsavory character that they did this with, but he was particularly embarrassing because of just how heinous the stuff he did was. And so Deutsche Bank, there was one lawsuit that Cahill Gordon was not involved in this one, but that was the victim suing. And then there was a separate lawsuit that actually Deutsche Bank was represented by Cahill Gordon, this judge's, the law firm of the husband of this judge in particular, which was about basically investors suing Deutsche Bank over the fact that once this business relationship came out and became this big embarrassing scandal, the stock value went down and they lost a bunch of money. So that's one firm, but over the years, Cahill Gordon has also represented firms like J.P. Morgan Chase. They've also represented Citigroup. Those are both financial firms that Epstein had relationships with over the years at different times. And probably the most kind of bad for optics is the fact that Bear Stearns has also been represented by Cahill Gordon. And Bear Stearns, it doesn't exist anymore, but that was the place that Epstein began his career in finance. He, even after he left, remained very close with the executives there, including one who flew in his plane. And not only did Judge Preska's husband, his law firm represent Bear Stearns, but Preska and her husband actually bought a multi-million-dollar penthouse for $500,000 less than the advertised price from one of Bear Stearns' executives. So, there's I talked to a legal expert about this, and what he said was that, more information has to come out to determine whether there really is a potential bias. But to me, I mean, if you gave this information to just about anyone on the street, they would say, yeah, that's pretty untoward. She probably should not be involved in deciding which documents come out that may implicate people, or give more information about Epstein's financial activities. That seems like a no-brainer to me.
Attorney Mark Fanchard, what responsibilities what are the responsibilities of a federal judge in this particular instance? I mean, should she recuse herself? I mean, just are there any? I mean, it's because we're seeing on the Supreme Court that basically they can't, they police themselves. A lot of people here want justice. I was watching CNN last week, and I saw Virginia Giuffre's family, to her two brothers and two sisters-in-law, Bronco and Bryce. And Mark, what was striking to me, you could see they were working class people, working class / poor. They did not have much. You could see that they could not pick up the call and dial up the powerful. And people like that, folks feel like they can crush them. And they said, you know what, this is not about Republicans or Democrats. This is just about justice. I want justice for my sister. And when you have these kinds of relationships, when I have judges who pass down sentences, put people to jail, effectively reshape their lives, if not end their lives. And you can be on a case, you can be involved in something of this import, and there's no call to accuse. Well, first of all, people don't even know about all of these ties, Mark. So help me. I mean, where's the justice here?
Yeah. Well, even if the relationships that this judge has with all of these different figures and organizations are such that they don't rise to the level of technically being conflicts of interest or things that would create for the judge bias or some sort of approach to the case that would be unfair or unjust. Judges also have to be concerned about what's generally referenced as the appearance of impropriety.
Mm-hmm.
And as Bronco mentioned, if the average person on the street looks at a situation like this and concludes whether they're looking and measuring this and evaluating it according to legal standards or ethical standards or not, if they conclude this really looks bad, I can't trust this judge. I question the integrity of the court. When a judge is concerned about that, they have a responsibility to say, let somebody else do it. And I think that in a case as highly charged as this one, as controversial as it is, and with all of the implications that surround it, that anybody who wants to get involved in it really needs to be scrupulous about looking at how whatever it is that they will do will be perceived.
But it seems like, but there's no check. I mean, nobody gets punished or gets called out, Mark, in this case. I mean, what is it? You had the prosecutor in Miami, Mr. Acosta, who became a secretary in the first Trump administration, who was told to lay off of Epstein because he was intelligence. I mean, and this was in a case when you're looking at the trafficking of underage young ladies.
Yeah, and I think it raises larger questions personally. I think we are so far beyond the point where we are, where legal niceties mean anything.
Mm.
I think that we are at a point of spiritual crisis in the country. I mean, look at this situation. It's one that involves not only a pedophile, but someone who is pulling large numbers or significant numbers of people into his pedophile ring, and they're all preying on countless helpless girls. There is the belief and the implication that he is also engaged in intelligence operations of a foreign country, specifically Israel, that part of what they're doing is collecting dirt for purposes of blackmail, for purposes of influencing government and governmental decisions and policies as it relates to Israel. And you have an individual who's in the Oval Office who is implying that the ultimate victims of all of this are chattel, that girls can be stolen from him.
Yeah.
So this is really in terms of its implications and its dimensions satanic. I mean, it completely lacks any semblance of morality, any evidence at all of anything that is grounded in basic human decency. And I think it really raises a larger question about this society and who we are as a community of people and where we go and what we do with this. I mean, it's about more than just uh, prosecuting people. It's a question about what we accept and what we tolerate as the moral standard for the country.
You know, because I'm wondering before you go, Bronco, I know we have a few more minutes with you, just if we're burying the lead here. Um, because we are looking at espionage. You know, we are looking at, you know, some of the most powerful, some of the most influential people who it's very clear whether they're in the judicial system or if they are in the executive branch of our government or the legislative branch, they can be blackmailed. And the will, and America can be bent in the direction that is away from the best interests of the country and its people. I mean, I just think there's a lot going on here, and now, I mean, you've done a deep dive on what's happening in the judiciary, and how can you trust anything? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are asking themselves that question, and it's not just in the judiciary. I mean, you think about congressional stock trading, which has been such a massive scandal for the past few years, and they still have not banned it. And members of Congress will say, well, I don't have any dealings with that. I'm in a blind trust. Someone else, a money manager, that's the person who does all my investments. But then you see people getting incredibly wealthy and making incredible stock trades, seemingly just a day or so before some massive piece of news that is withheld from the public comes forward that affects a particular industry. And you do wonder how much of that is affecting even subconsciously. I mean, we know that it doesn't have to be that people consciously think to themselves, well, I have to rule in this way or I have to vote in this way because it will affect this particular aspect of my net worth. Even just the subconscious influence that can present. I think all of it contributes to this larger crisis of democracy that the United States has been in for a number of years, where it feels like not only are institutions not responsive to ordinary people as they should be in a democracy, but it feels like everything has become kind of soaked in money and financial entanglements, all the way up to the executive, and that's beyond everything else. That's just not a good thing for a society, for a democracy. I think it will lead to more things like we saw on January 6th, where people just have lost faith completely in the democratic and political institutions of the country and do increasingly drastic things because they don't believe in American democracy anymore.
well, because you showed us that Judge Preska she has not just had issues with this case, and we can go back a decade, and I'm sure we could even go back further. And there are many instances in which she has had a conflict, in which she's had conflicts of interest. She stayed on the case, and she has stepped back and given people enough space to um, to change their stories, suppress their stories. I mean, it's just a lot here. And do you think that that is part of the reason that the story, it is not only will it not die, it just continues to get bigger?
Well, I mean, the Epstein story, I think there's a number of things behind why it's so big. I mean, number one, I mean, the extreme nature of the crime is bad enough. I mean, we're talking about potentially thousands of victims over so many years, but then also the fact that he had so many political connections, the fact that he was able to get off from being prosecuted, with this basically what was a slap in the wrist, an extraordinary slap in the wrist that people who have done a fraction of the crimes that he had committed do not get. And then the fact that he is intimately tied up with the guy who is the president of the United States right now. I mean, all of that I think contributes to the fact that the story will not die, and I don't think it will. It seems like the Trump administration is kind of pulling out all the stops to find ways to distract people or to make people believe like they have released all the information that they need to release and that the matter is settled. But none of it's really worked. Public interest remains, I would say, very high in this story. And more things just keep coming out. I mean, I am sure that from what I understand, the Wall Street Journal article that came out a bit ago, that's obviously, dominated headlines for a bit, that was only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to come. So, I honestly, from everything that's just happened, Trump's attempt and the people around him, their attempts to suppress this story and to kind of cover it up in broad daylight have not worked. And they've done the opposite. They have only increased people's interest in this and made people more convinced than ever that the president is hiding something. So I just don't see how this is going to go away for him, personally.
I mean, you're from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, Bryce, and so you too you're a journalist. How do you think this is being reported? I mean, when you hear about the judge and the judge's issues, it's just a hornet's nest.
Well, this case is interesting because it's really a Rorschach test for these different parts of the media. There was an article, I think it might have been in Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting a while ago, that looked at the mentions of Clinton with respect to the Epstein story versus mentions of Trump with respect to the Epstein story, and they divided it by the partisan leaning of the media. They looked at Fox and CNN and MSNBC, and left-leaning outlets, they tended to focus on Trump and Epstein while downplaying Clinton and Epstein, whereas right-wing media did the opposite. In a way, it's an example that the only reason that media tend to focus on these sort of scandals is when they can get some sort of political gain out of it. And recently, we're seeing some Democrats starting to talk about the Epstein case, but they're certainly not going as full deep into this as one might expect, given the extreme vulnerability that Trump would have on this. As we were mentioning earlier, in another age, something like this would have brought down a president, even by virtue of implication. Even being friends with a convicted pedophile like Jeffrey Epstein would be an enormous scandal. But, we've changed so much over the last 30 years that, the president can pay off a porn star and lie about it, and that barely even makes the top 5 lists of scandals for his administration. But the fact is, accountability is something that's really elusive in our government and in the media especially. The fact that accountability only becomes a talking point when there's political fodder to be scooped up from this, it explains something very deep about our political system. I think the way that Trump is responding to it is another example of this. Right when the Epstein, the case flew into public view with Trump's announcement, or Pam Bondi's announcement, rather, that there was nothing to see, the Trump administration started putting out a lot of information about what they're calling Obamagate or Spygate, which is the whole story connected to the Obama administration's and their intelligence agencies' connection to promoting the Trump-Russia story. Now, everyone is very clear that this is an attempted distraction from the Epstein case, and no one's in doubt about that. But the question is, okay, well, what do we do with that? The only reason that this case is being brought out and being talked about by the right is so that they can attack the left, so that they can attack Democrats. There is no universal accountability unless there is some political gain. The Obamagate story, the Russiagate story, is very important. The ways that intelligence agencies and the American oligarchy are able to intervene in the democratic process to affect an outcome, that's a very important story. But it's being wielded as a political tool rather than as any genuine truth-seeking or fact-finding mission. It's being used like that because that's how scandals are in this country. There is no scandal that is neutral or that can be used to take down the entire system, because if it was, like the Epstein case, it would be downplayed or wielded merely for partisan goals. In the Epstein case, they're wielding it only to the extent that it is partisan. In the Spygate case, they are wielding it only to the extent that it's partisan. But they're not digging deeper and asking about the deep political arrangements that actually shape our country. For example, the idea that Alex Acosta would be put off of Trump or put off of Epstein because of his ties to intelligence community, well, that's a major scandal that speaks to the clandestine aspects of our state, that speaks to the lawless nature of some of the highest levels of government. But that's really downplayed here. It's really not
just downplayed. It's obscured. I mean, he should have gone to prison. He was allowed to be home and literally sleep in jail. Or so we are told, overnight, and then he would leave the next morning.
He would leave the next morning and then go continue to commit more heinous sex crimes. But this was supported by all levels of government. And this is similar to our earlier scandals that have happened long before. I mean, during the Clinton administration, for example, that was the tail end of what was called the Franklin scandal, in which, an Omaha credit union was found to be at the center of a child trafficking ring that stretched to, was largely Republican oriented, where children were flown around the country. If you're interested in reading more about this, the book by Nick Bryant is essential in learning about this. But that was at the start of the Clinton administration. But this, when that network
I think Franklin was Reagan. The Reagan.
The scandal was wrapping up during the later H.W. Bush years and into the Clinton years. But yes, the events that the scandal covered was during the Reagan years.
Yeah.
And high-level Republican operatives were at the center of that. But this was a case similar to the Epstein case, where there were credible reports of some of the most heinous crimes you could imagine, but the media apparatus and the apparatus of ostensibly of law enforcement and public justice was really asleep at the wheel. The victims were actually harassed and attacked by the federal government. In fact, one of the victims was even indicted on perjury for even daring to bring up these charges, and spent time in jail for refusing to recant her story. And when the state investigator sent an investigator to go and look into the case, he was mysteriously killed in a plane accident that William Colby, the former CIA director who investigated it, found it to be an example of foul play. So this is, deep within our history. But right when that scandal was wrapping up, Jeffrey Epstein was getting guided tours through the Clinton White House. They had a very close relationship, and Epstein was being integrated into the high levels of finance, and all the while he was seemingly running this operation and acting as an asset of either a foreign intelligence agency, Mossad. His colleague Ghislaine Maxwell, very close to the Mossad. Her father was one of the most famous Mossad agents ever, but also with the CIA. The Central Intelligence Agency certainly wouldn't allow a foreign operation to go unnoticed on its soil, and as we know, the CIA and Mossad are very close. So all of this points to a system, not individuals, not a few bad actors here or there, not a bad corrupt judge here or there, but a system in which this kind of corruption can hardly be even called corruption because it's so endemic to how politics is run. There, there are some characters,
And it shapes our politics. It shapes our policies.
and it
Because
shapes our.
wasn't Clinton in the middle of he was in the middle of a Middle East peace negotiation when he had Yasser Arafat here, and he was confronted by Netanyahu about Monica Lewinsky. Yes.
Yes, Israel was spying on the Clinton White House and recording some of the calls between Clinton and everyone, but Clinton, uh, they probably only had to look at Monica Lewinsky's phones because they would have been unsecured. But they were, Netanyahu explicitly brought up to Clinton the fact that the Israelis had recordings of the Lewinsky tapes, and this was during the around the Camp David period in 2000, when there was a major push to at least make a show of trying to find some sort of solution to Israel-Palestine, and it ended with. It's a long and complicated story, but it ended with Israel walking away from the table and the inauguration of the Second Intifada. But all of this is to say that in America there is a public state that we all know and we all see elected officials, campaigns, the congressional process, voting, things like that. There's a public state that we can all see. But underneath that, and this is where the term comes from, is a deeper political system that was called by some left wing scholars a deep state, a deep political system in which arrangements are not public facing, in which power isn't openly acknowledged, and its functions and its goals and its intentions are often obscured. Now, this is where we see things like this corruption. This is where people like Jeffrey Epstein, this is where intelligence agencies, this is where drug trafficking networks lie. But that's a core part of our politics. I mean, just look at the mafia going back, to the early 20th century. They were murdering people, bribing politicians, all sorts of racketeering and crime. But it was part of American politics, and it shaped the country that we are in today. That stuff didn't magically just disappear because, we are now in an era of lawfulness and the rule of law reigns supreme. No, it only changed forms, and Jeffrey Epstein and the intrigue surrounding him is really just the most recent and most glaring example of that deep political system.
I mean, in your estimation, Mark, what is this story about? I mean, is it about the trafficking, technically pederasty, because when you're beyond 12, it's not pedophilia, it's pederasty, but it's still awful because these were young, underage girls whose families were working poor people, people that could be thrown away, right? I mean, no one can be thrown away. Of course, no one is refuse. But in the minds of these elite people, these folks were expendable. Is it about this, or is it about maybe a foreign government that is blackmailing our elected officials to do their will? Or is it both?
It's about those things and more. And if it were only about the corruption of public officials, the immorality of the people who are caught up in this, the victimization of underage girls, intelligence, shenanigans, and all of that. If that's all that it were about, that would be disturbing enough. But what compounds this, in my mind, is the fact that it all occurs within a society where the vast majority of people really don't care about those things.
Mm.
The intensity of the interest among the MAGA crowd, anyway, in this has less to do probably with the concern about the victims or the integrity of government or any of those things. they're driven by a passionate hatred. And in their minds, they have been convinced that these files, these documents that have not been disclosed, contain all of the proof and evidence of all of the wild conspiracy theories that they've been, trading with each other and in their circles for any number of years, and that they will finally find the smoking guns that will bury the people that they hate the most.
Mhm.
So this is a hate-driven interest that they have. It's not a morality-driven
Mhm.
interest that they have, and that is what I think. I have frequently called Donald Trump an idiot, but in his own way, he's shrewdly brilliant because these negotiations with Maxwell and all of these things, while most people would look at that and say, well, look, even if he persuades her to come forward and to exonerate him, to tell stories that leave him out of it, that somehow uh, leave him smelling like a rose. Nobody will believe it because she's already been proved to have committed perjury. She's been engaged in the most heinous of crimes. She lacks any shred of credibility in the minds of decent people. But what he shrewdly understands is that his base is not is not really concerned about her integrity. Uh, that they will be satisfied if she comes forward and tells all kinds of salacious and terrible stories about Bill Clinton, and it gives them something that they can run with. If they get from her the evidence that they need to go after the people that they hate, they
Mhm.
will lose all interest in full disclosure and accountability, transparency, and prosecution of people who were involved in preying upon these girls. And that's what's so disturbing about it to me is that you're always going to have within a society people who are corrupt, people who are evil, but it's always presumed that the vast majority of people do adhere to a certain moral standard so that when they become aware of these things, that the collective weight of their outrage will put that in check and will set things aright. I think that we're living in a society that is totally lost, that is in some ways spiritually dead, and that while there remains, a spark among many people of goodwill, people who still maintain scruples, people who do still have a spiritual orientation. There are still quite a few of those people,
Mhm.
but I really am concerned that their influence is outweighed by these others who are really driven by something that's much more cynical and much more hateful.
Why did that resonate with you, Bryce?
Well, it's what kind of what I was saying earlier. Like, if someone were to seriously delve into this entire system, if someone were to challenge the legitimacy of this entire public state legal apparatus by pointing out that it's so corrupt that it's allowing some of the worst crimes. eh, take Epstein as one example, but take the genocide in Gaza as another example. Take the U.S. quest to dominate the world. I mean, this whole system produces so many immoral and deadly and disgusting outcomes. By the time that someone actually, if someone were to actually unravel it, if someone were to pull on one of these cords, it would unravel an entire system that is enriching the people who are running the show. And so there's so much at stake in keeping these things hidden. You don't have to just stick with Epstein stuff. I mean, this is with all state crimes. Have you noticed that no one who has committed a grievous lie against the public, lied us into war, done something to enrich themselves at the expense of the general public, none of these people have ever been punished in any serious way. All of these people fail upward. Like the people who lied us into war with Iraq, they all got promoted. The people who destroyed Afghanistan and lied to the public about the progress on it, they all got promoted. The people who covered up the Jeffrey Epstein network, they're going to get promoted. The
Mhm.
people who lied to the public about, pick a topic, all these people get promoted, and there is no check, there is no way for the system to actually correct itself. And so, if trends persist, we're actually headed towards a pretty big disaster where the reality of the criminal enterprise that is the American government meets the expectation, the myth, the American ideal of some free open society. One day the people's expectations are in a clash with that reality, and the government and the state and the oligarchs are going to have to find a way to resolve it. Otherwise, they'll have some sort of insurrection or some sort of uh, deep crisis of legitimacy of the entire system. If we look outside of the U.S., this crisis of legitimacy is already happening, right?
Mhm.
Other countries see these things. They see, well, they see the Epstein case for one, but they see the wars, they see the graft, they see the rackets, they see the extraction of wealth from their own countries, and they're saying that this entire project that we're calling the American free system it's a lie. It's all based on total falsity, and it's predatory, and it's time to move past it. I think the world is there, and the American public are soon going to follow if trends persist.
Well, because it seems that this is really transpartisan because Trump's numbers are falling. Because I think that even his adherents expected him to clean up the mess. And you can see administration after administration after administration, Democratic and Republican, have protected Epstein. And they have been honeypotted because these are honeypot operations, right? When you use intimate activities to blackmail people. And this has gone on for decades. I just think that it seems like there's something in the zeitgeist in which people are pulling, how you see a little thread hanging from clothing, but you got to be careful because if you pull it, you might pull the whole garment apart. It seems like we're there, Mark. Because I think that yes, people are. This is for them. For many people, this is not about principle. This is about a person. But for some people, this is about principle because his numbers are going down, and people are saying, "Wait a minute! I thought you were going to clean up the swamp. I didn't know that you were in it." Eh, maybe I'm giving people too much credit. I don't know. Um, but this is it. Just to me, it just gets worse. Well, not gets worse. It's more revelatory by the day, Mark. We see more and more of the rot in the system.
Yeah, I think you may be giving some people too much credit
Okay.
in that um, it's really their perception and their definition of what the swamp is. For most of us, we have what I think is a reasonable person's sense of what is right and wrong, what's moral and what's immoral. But I think within this little subculture that exists, in the MAGA crew and everybody else, they have defined evil as they say that evil is embodied in the form of people like Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, people who they believe are part of this deep state, that they're engaged in conspiracies, concealing things, hiding things, and that all of these kinds of people are colluding and conspiring against decent, hardworking white people, and that they want to get these people. They hate these people because they're responsible for all of their misery. And so, as long as Trump is blocking or impeding their efforts to try and get the dirt on these villains who they built up, in their radio shows and in their social media and other ways, uh, as long as he's standing in the way of that, then he's not going to have their support. He is going to suffer in the polls. But if he is able to somehow throw them some red meat, if he is somehow able to give them something that uh, helps to reaffirm these myths and beliefs and conspiracies that they have been trading in for the last number of years, then it's likely that his support among that group will go back up. And so I think that that's where at least for that group the problem is. And where I do think that there is a basis for being encouraged and a basis for being hopeful is in the generational um, awareness that I think is growing, among the young. Because I did see a small snippet from a focus group, even with MAGA young people, who were talking about their concerns about the starvation in Gaza. And that seemed to be coming from a place that was not in any way tainted by this crazy ideology that MAGA has. It just seemed to be human compassion. And if they as young people have been able to hang on to that, then I think that that's a reason for having some hope that the redemption of this society can be found in a growing awareness and a growing concern about how government treats people,
Mhm.
how the extreme concentration of power in the hands of an oligarchy and others, as that continues to grow, then I think it creates opportunities for people to push beyond the little boxes that they've been living in and to get more information that might cause them to have personal breakthroughs in terms of their orientation.
Where should the emphasis be, or the emphases be in this case? It seems like there's just so much uh, to touch upon. Is it the how we treat the least of these girls and their families? Is it how we're watching? I mean, really, people's lives have been changed by the policies that people have been blackmailed over, right? I mean, where should the emphases be? Are we perceiving this in the right way?
I think reasonable people are perceiving it in the right way. And I think there are a lot of people who still lack enough information to make a comprehensive analysis. I think the average person has no clue as to the connection between Epstein and Mossad or the
Mhm.
intelligence element of this. But I think
Does that
overall,
make a difference? Is that important?
oh, it's extremely important
Why?
because it that connects. That makes it even more broad in its implications because of people are separately concerned about starvation in Gaza. They're separately concerned about war in Palestine. They're separately concerned about Jeffrey Epstein. But if you know some of these things, you begin to see connections, and you begin to make an analysis that allows you to be more precise in terms of what you're fighting against and what you're fighting for. But for those who don't have all of the information, and I don't think any of us have all of the information yet, I think the most reliable approach to it is one that was given to us more than 2,000 years ago.
Mhm.
I think Jesus was right on point when he said that you've got to do two things. One, you've got to protect the least of these,
Mhm.
and if we're driven by that, then we know that we want to protect the victims of Epstein's schemes, but also the victims in Gaza who
Mhm.
are indirectly connected with this. I mean, so we want to protect them. And two, we have to recognize that the world itself is inherently corrupt and evil, and that a person of faith in particular has to reject it outright, that we can't become committed to trying to reform it, that we can't be committed to the idea that we can improve it. It is corrupt, and we have to reject it outright. And we know we're doing our job when we cause the world to hate us. So if we're doing things that causes all of the people who are not only at the heart of the Epstein issue, but those surrounding it who are enabling it, concealing it, and covering it up or whatever, if we cause them to hate us, then we know we're on the right track. And so I think we just have to push and prod and inquire, organize, mobilize, and protect.
What do you think will get people there in the last couple of minutes?
I think that people have to look beyond just the material aspects of this. I think that they have to be put in the position of evaluating this on a spiritual level and saying, aside from the personalities involved, aside from uh, procedurally what's happening in the courts and in Congress and elsewhere, aside from all of that, what do we think about ultimately what this is all about and what its implications are in terms of who we are as human beings and what we want in terms of what's right and what's just. And I think that when people begin to evaluate it by that standard, then I think their tolerance, their outrage, if they're still grounded in reality, will rise to a level where they'll do the things that I think are necessary in order to at least make some progress in terms of who we are as human beings.
Last question. What does this say about who we are? Just that this has gone on for so long. I mean, because I just feel like, Attorney Fancher, Mark, this has been a revelation. Because, we no longer have a page, remember the page, you used to have pages in the U.S. House of Representatives. We had to end that because you remember, of course, Congressman Mark Foley out of Virginia. His behavior was so outrageous, as well as others, that you just had to stop that. You just couldn't send your children there. Um, power does corrupt. Certainly it can.
Well, the world itself is corrupt. And I think we just are, we want to turn a blind eye to it. The world tells these politicians that this type of behavior, or told these politicians that this type of behavior with pages and underage, children,
Oh, yeah.
was not only acceptable but to be celebrated and to be encouraged. That's the culture, and compounding the horror of it is that they were also encouraged and told that while it's a wonderful thing, while they'll slap each other on the back and snicker and engage in this kind of conduct, that they were also expected, and it's expected that they would stand up on podiums and denounce that type of thing, and to hold themselves up as virtuous and the standard bearers for morality. So it's not only depravity, but hypocrisy and just blatant lying, which is all bound up in a filthy, filthy kind of a culture that has been dominant, certainly in the political arena, but in many other places as well. And, I think people who want to be better just have to frankly acknowledge that. And we need to stop telling our children, we need to stop pointing to these kinds of people as heroic. We need to stop telling them that this system works, that this country is a decent country that has a wonderful history, because it doesn't. We need to be absolutely brutally honest with them about what they're born into and what they're being raised in, and to challenge them not to become leaders of this kind of thing, but to become those who want to destroy it and to build something new and better with people who share a commitment to decency and morality.
Hey, everybody. We're going to continue this conversation with Colleen Rowley, of course, the FBI whistleblower who has been on a hunger strike, Mark Fancher, in solidarity with the people of Gaza are being starved to death. But let us also be mindful that this is also happening in Sudan. More than 100,000 Sudanese over the past month and a half or so have starved to death. something is going on here. We need to expose it all. Here on the Santita Jackson Show, attorney Mark Fancher sending you so much love. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Back in just a moment.